Hola a todos. Quizás podría dar esta presentación en español, pero todo el equipo de Mediamorphosis, honestamente incluye yo, quieren que presente en inglés, so I will speak English. This is a talk about why AI is not going to make your game. It's a talk about game design. It's a talk about artificial intelligence. And it's a lot about what artificial intelligence is right now and what it can and can't do. So I'm a game designer, and I'm an interactive narrative designer, and I found companies and do games for over 20 years. These are some of my games. It's like some commercial stuff, some stuff for brands like HBO and PBS and Disney and stuff like that. Most recently, I was a game design. I helped do the game design on this product that just announced at TechCrunch, which is called Board, which is you play digital games with physical pieces on a board. You can Google Board TechCrunch and you'll find out more about it. But I also do interactive narrative work, and particularly work around AI, which I've been doing for a while. So this was a piece I did about 5 years ago with Lance Weiler and Rachel Ginsberg and another number of other people called Frankenstein AI, in which we created a small AI that you could talk to and teach how to be human through interacting with screens and then through a conversation with a dancer who is being guided by the AI. That is an impossible piece to explain, but that's as good as I'm going to do. And most recently, we're working on a new piece. This isn't out yet, but we just started it, called Last Human, which is a synthetic haunted house, meaning a haunted house based entirely on technology without actors. And the idea is it's a meditation on what's called AI slop, right? Meaning like things that are generated by AI that are noise or lies or fake, and looking at relationships that we have to truth given AI. But this piece uses AI because we use the AI to make the AI slop that we show you as horror. So I've done a lot of work with artificial intelligence as an artist, and I've made games. And so I want to talk about where those things are compatible and where they aren't. All right, so where is AI in games traditionally? Well, kind of everywhere, because we've been using AI for years. Have you ever done this? That's AI. Have you ever done this? That's AI, right? And so artificial intelligence isn't something we haven't had access to because our definition of artificial intelligence changes over time, right? This is artificial, well, let me go back. This is artificial intelligence because the system has a sense of what words you are looking for and has a way of comparing this to the words, and then thinks, right, with heavy quotes in the air, about what words you want to use. This, in Photoshop, looks for a color and colors close to that color, and then removes those colors while ignoring other colors. These are not idle examples for reasons you'll see in a moment, because AI, like these two things, is the primary ways that AI is used today in the most conceptual sense. But also, game developers have used AI for a long time because we have systems that have to operate and operate intelligently, even though they're not controlled. And so what you're seeing here is what's called pseudocode, meaning not real programming, but the kind of loose programming you do to think of something called A star. And A star is a really traditional algorithm that's used in games to control movement. So if you've ever played a game that's like a turn-based game where an enemy moves on its own, that is artificial intelligence, because the enemy has to look at a location and decide how, well, that is not right on that at all, and decide how it's going to get from A to B, right? It's going to have to look at A and then say, how do I get to B? And you can see in this example that there are two paths given the obstacle to get to A to B, and the system has to decide which one it's going to take. And there's a long time way of thinking about this through programming that's called A star that gives you a capacity to do that, and that's artificial intelligence. And games have been calling it artificial intelligence for decades, right? We have been using this language forever. It's just a way of thinking that the computer can think, again, in quotes. And so, AI has been around for years, right? It's not anything new for us. We've been dealing with it for a long time. We largely use it in things like writing, art production, programming, because if you use programming in what's called an IDE or a development environment, often it's predictive. It has been predictive for years. It would like try to autocomplete code for you, right? And so it was used as a tool, right, to help, as well as actually in the games as something we programmed. And it's basically a way of helping people do their jobs, or making hard things easy, or making things that would be onerous not onerous, right? Which means it's technology, right? That's what it is. AI is technology. And you know, you could look at technology, other technologies that have done this. I don't know if any of you have made photographs as demonstrated on stage right, but that's how you used to make photographs, right? With like lots of chemicals in a weirdly lit space where you had to like dunk something several times and it took several hours. And that was annoying, right? And now you touch a part of your screen on your multi-use device and you get the same result, right? And we don't do the thing on stage right anymore because it's onerous. Maybe even a better example is like we could think about the idea that we used to travel, you know, primarily on foot or using animal labor that took a long time and was really troubling. And then sometime in the 19th century, we came up with this technology that would move us around, right? And then that became a dominant way of thinking. And trains are a really interesting case study we're going to come back to about AI, because the history of trains tells us something about where AI is going, I think, to me and a lot of economists. So yeah, technology makes our lives easier. AI makes our lives easier. AI has made our lives easier in games, and so we've used AI in games. But we're in this new place because now we have this thing called generative AI. And generative AI is generally what we're talking about when we talk about AI today, right? Like we look at artificial intelligence today, and what we're looking at are systems that make things for us. And we broadly call those generative AI. And if you're unfamiliar with this, I'm just going to do this fast. So there's a lot of AI in writing. These are called large language models. This is stuff like ChatGPT and Claude. This is actually the heart of a lot of artificial intelligence, because most other kinds of AI systems use this as the root to how they work. But the basic idea is that you type something into a prompt and it can generate text for you. And that generation can take the form of like, write me something like this, write me something based on this, write me something in the style of this, and combinations therein. Have many of you used ChatGPT or something like that before? Great. We can make art with it. This is Midjourney. You type a prompt in and it makes a picture. And if you type a prompt in based on the last thing you wrote, it makes more pictures. And it changes your picture based on the things you write, right? So they can generate art now. There are systems that generate music. There are systems that generate voice. I'm using the example on the right because this is Canva. Canva is not a audio AI generation system, but Canva has built into it an AI voice generation system, right? So that you can actually have the things in Canva, which is largely just like a design tool, read out loud by a voice of your choosing that is artificially generated, right? So all of that stuff kind of exists. And then finally, we can make video. And this is in some ways the most impressive thing. So you're looking at the Sora interface right now, S-O-R-A. And Sora can make full video pieces from prompts. I like to use this example because I think it speaks to the reality of AI, but this is a video by the band Washed Out, or by the musician Washed Out, called The Hardest Part. This came out like maybe a year and a half ago. This video is entirely made with AI. Like there's nothing human in it at all. Right? It's a 4.5 minute. I'm not going to show it to you because I don't particularly like it, but it's a 4-minute long video that was entirely made by AI. And like this got a lot of backlash in the music industry. It was like roundly condemned when this happened, and the director of the video talked about like basically why they did it this way. But I think the key thing about it is, if you think about it, like Washed Out is a single musician, right? His name is Green, that's the whole band. He does not have a lot of money, right? He does not have the capacity to make like very big videos. Washed Out is an amazing band, by the way. I really like their music. I just don't like this video, but they don't have the capacity to make videos like that are going to use multiple scenes with duplicates of the same actor through it, right? Like they can't pull that off. So making AI kind of makes sense. Like it's a faster way to do it. Like that's what we talked about previously, like in this talk, right? Like I can make a video pretty fast, essentially without having to do all the things I would have to do in terms of like finding actors and finding sets and shooting it or building it in a game engine and like putting it all together. And so that's like the use of AI. And so when we see that, like your head might go somewhere if you didn't know a ton about game development and you were thinking about it just in the abstract, or if you came from a certain kind of like AI hyping business strategy perspective, which is like, well, we just said AI can do code, and AI can do art, and AI can do writing, and AI can do video, and AI can do voice acting. So that just sounds like game development, right? Like if I can make programming, and I can make art, and I can make writing, and I can make voice acting, and I can make sound, that's all the pieces of a game. So I can make games with AI. Right? And this talk is essentially about why that's not true. So why can't I just make the whole game with AI if all of that is true? There are 3 reasons, and I want to take them one at a time. AI can make a game for you before I go forward. That it can do right now. Like you could go to Copilot, you could, like Copilot, which is an AI tool that Microsoft created that works with code, and you could say, make me a version of Flappy Bird, and it could probably make you a version of Flappy Bird. Right? It would not be probably the full game of Flappy Bird, it would probably be like a little interaction of Flappy Bird, but you could play Flappy Bird from that, right? That would work. But not your game. AI cannot make your game for you. And that's what I want to talk about. Reason 1, AI is mediocre. This is not an insult to AI. I don't mean that connotatively. I mean that denotatively. I mean that definitionally AI is average. Let me explain why. Large language models. I am going to do this very fast and a little sloppy, but what I'm saying is generally true about how this works. A large language model is a predictive system of AI. What does that mean? To make a large language model, you take a giant piece of data, and I mean giant piece of data. You have to have like enormous amounts of text to make this work. And so like part of the reason why AI companies were making deals with things like Reddit was because there's just tons and tons and tons of writing on Reddit, and they just need all of that natural language. By the way, fascinating side effect of computers is that we have more writing from normal people than we have ever had in human history before. Like we literally are seeing more people write now at the time that we've had the internet than we have writing for the rest of human history by exponents. There's a great book called Because Internet, if you're interested in that you can check out. Anyway, take that big section of data and then analyze it for patterns of frequency, right? In the most literal sense of like, if I say the word black, right? And then I look for the word, well, let me do this. Actually, I'll do this one in Spanish because that'll make more sense to everybody. If I say the word perro, right? And then I'm looking for the word that's going to come after perro, negro may come after perro a lot, right? But so might, I don't know, marron, right? And so the AI just looks and counts that. Okay, so if the word perro comes up, how often does this word come after it? How often does that word come after it? How often does that word come after it? And then it generates new material using those numbers. Right? It just says, oh, okay, I write a word, I pick a word to start with, like the, and then I say, what is the most common word that would come after the, based on the prompt, and I throw that word out. And then what is the most common word that comes after that word? And I throw that word out. The AI has no idea what it is writing. Like 0. It's all it's doing is just predicting. Now, this is modified in contemporary AI systems because the AI can analyze the thing you wrote and pull out certain values from it, like what's the sentiment of it, like what's the feeling of what you wrote. Is there a specific text you want it to look at so it'll like aim for particular kinds of things? It can understand like values from the prompt you gave, but essentially That's what it's doing, right? It's just guessing based on probability about the next thing that comes. What's incredible about AI is that works, right? That actually does get us pretty close to writing things, especially things that have already existed. So a thing you can do if you want to be unethical and play around with AI is to ask AI to write like a writer you like. And because AI stole many, 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 many works of writers to make itself exist, it is very good at doing that, right? Excellent at doing that, actually. And so this is great, right? This works super well, but it's designed to do a particular thing, which is find frequency. Images and audio and video come from a different kind of AI system, which is called the diffusion model. This works differently, but it starts the same way. You have to get the prompt that you typed into Midjourney or Sora into the system, so you do the same basic language modeling you do for the large language models. That's why they're important. You convert that into something called a meaning vector, which basically means like you try to figure out what the value of the image that you're about to create is measured against, right? When is the image I'm creating good? And you do that by synthesizing that from a giant data set of images. So you look at tons of images of dogs, and then you come up in the system. By the way, we don't know how this works, just so you know. Like AI researchers don't know how this works. This is in the black box of AI. But somewhere in the black box of AI, the AI knows what a dog is numerically. And then it takes the thing that you are looking for, which is dog, and it converts that into the number. And then it just starts to generate random noise, and it just does that over and over again until it gets closer and closer to the vector number you established. Right? So it just like takes dogs, averages them, then sees you want a dog, and then just starts generating content until it gets close to what it thinks an average dog is. What do these things have in common? Frequency, right? That is what AI is looking for, frequency. That's how it understands everything. That's how it's defined. So AI works because it is looking for the most common things. It is trying to get to an average that it established for itself, right? And it's based on the data set that it had. I mean, that's a simplification. Like, there's a lot of complication to this, and there's lots and lots and lots of money going into thinking about the stuff. But that's how the whole thing works. That's like the model everything is based on. So what it produces by definition is mediocre. It's aiming to produce mediocre. The target is mediocre. That's like what it wants. It wants to copy or summarize or find the average of something to give it to you. Now, that is great because mediocre is awesome for a whole bunch of stuff in the world. There's a ton of stuff that you do not need to be perfect and specific. And in fact, it's kind of a waste to make it perfect and specific. If you can't do something, mediocre is terrific, right? I can't draw at all, nothing. So if I need a piece of art and I have to do it, that is terrible. So like having AI make me a drawing is so much better than my drawing is gonna be, right? And that's a good use of AI, right? And this has like actually been like proven over and over again. This is like traditionally proven. There was a pretty famous study that came out of business reporting that when people were introduced to AI in different kinds of management jobs, the people who got the most benefit out of the AI were the most junior people. Because the most junior people lacked the skills that AI was providing, and so AI worked really well for them. Whereas more senior people could actually do the things faster and didn't use it, right? And so that's a good use. There's a lot of stuff that getting original quality isn't that useful. And this is why AI and code go so nicely together, and that most people who program nowadays use Copilot to help them. Like, a lot of code is routine. Like, you're not doing like genius code when you're coding. You're just trying to get a function out. And so something that gives you that function, that's like the average function that people use for things, is great, right? Like, that's all I really want. My single sign-on for my website, I'm not doing any genius computer science there, right? Like, every website on the face of the earth has that thing. And largely, if I was gonna do it myself, I probably would have just gone to Stack Overflow and looked at somebody else's code to figure out how to do it. So if like AI can do that for me, great, that's terrific. And there's a whole bunch of stuff where the specific quality doesn't matter. Like if I'm doing a transcript of the notes from a Zoom meeting, have you ever like looked at the notes from a meeting you were in and said, wow, what amazing writing, right? And then just marveled at it? Do you remember the times in your company where you got together on your retreat and you read the best writing from the transcripts of your meetings, right? Like, I don't need it to be great. Like just summarize my stuff and do a good job of summarizing my stuff. Great, right? And so in these cases, you're seeing like again, because like I'm not using mediocre in a judgmental way. Like there's a lot of stuff that like having something that just does something very fast and competently is terrific, right? It is great if I don't know how to do it. And my ability to do it fast and competent is 0. It is great if it's something where fast and competent is all I actually need. And that might be because the thing I'm doing doesn't have to be original at all, or it might be because the thing I'm doing actually doesn't require quality. It requires competence and speed. And that AI is terrific for. And again, that's why Copilot, this is what Copilot looks like in the basic Microsoft IDE, is amazing, right? And that most programmers nowadays are working with and teaching Copilot in contexts of classrooms, right? Because it's just faster. This leads, by the way, to a whole concept in very contemporary computer programming that's called vibe coding, where you just have Copilot write the code for you. And that actually does work for certain kinds of prototypes, right? Like you can get up to prototype speed. That project I was talking about before, Last Human, what we have done in our workshops is we just bring in random people like who come to our workshops and we sit them down with somebody who's used Copilot before and we have them vibe code something with that person in about 45 minutes. And then we have stuff in another room that's like showing like auto-visual experiences. You know, before I go into back to like why AI is not gonna make your game for us, can we just take a second to marvel at how crazy that is? Like what a world we live in now where like random humans who have never seen code before could like sit down with somebody who can just help them do a little bit of prompting and in 45 minutes their vision can be real. That's cool, right? This is great technology. Don't take anything I'm saying to say that you shouldn't use AI or that AI isn't great technology. But anyway, what is mediocre not good for though? Original stuff, right? Like that's not what it's built to do. Right? AI is built to copy and to find averages. It is not built to make new things. Now, AI can make new things because AI does random stuff. So sometimes it'll create noise, sometimes it'll create really interesting noise, sometimes it'll create really inspiring noise. But when you do that, you're just sort of rolling dice, right? Like the AI doesn't know it's creating anything really interesting or good because that's not what it's designed to measure for. It's just an accident of its use. And that's interesting, but that's kind of interesting the way like rolling dice to generate a story is interesting, right? Or using like random paint splatters to start a painting is interesting. Like it might inspire you to do something interesting, but the AI can't take that very far because it doesn't know how to value it. And this is what happens when you like push AI really hard. If you like take AI writing tools or AI drawing tools and you try to push them towards something original, they tend to just deviate and fall off. And the reason why is because that's how they're designed. Right? If they're off in an unknown space, then they have no fitness function to take them back to something good. There's no meaning vector there, right? And if there's no meaning vector there, then they're going to just deviate away from it. And so without an average to rely on, it's not that good. And humans are much better because we are not limited by those things at following original things forward. Problem 2. General AI, as opposed to the specific examples of AI we looked at, is not necessarily good at anything. And this has kind of been demonstrated over and over again. Vibe coding is really great as a way to prototype, and it turns out to be really terrible as a way to make things in the world. Because without really knowing how the code works and not knowing what the program is doing, it can introduce a lot of errors in the code that the program doesn't realize it's making. This is very dangerous for security reasons. There have been very large hacks of applications that have happened just because they were vibe coded and no one knew the hack was there. And so Wired wrote this recently essentially arguing that like you should not be vibe coding commercial products because you don't know what's in them, and that's dangerous. Sora is not really gonna kill movies because like getting Sora to make something long enough to be a movie is a pain, and the deviations that it goes through to get anywhere near that just falls apart. Also, prompting is not an easy thing to do for something as complex as a movie, right? I guess if I want a movie, if my whole idea for a movie is tracking shot of high point over city into city, right? I guess I could make that, but I'd like city. I didn't even define the city. I didn't define the things in the city. I didn't put the things in the city. And what is a prompt that I'm going to type into a paragraph long box that's going to get me to the complexity of a film, right? That's like a really unsolved problem. So like, while it's good for making little things, Sora is the kind of software that people looked at and were kind of like, what would I actually use this for other than really, really hacky, gross political ads? I think that might have relevance for you all. It has relevance for us too, if you don't mind. There was our current president did something super interesting with AI recently that was pretty fascinating. Stuff like that, right? Like it's not like it's an amazing piece of technology, but I'm not quite sure what it's for. And generalized productivity, there's been no proof at all. This came out, like, I mean, this was just from like a couple months ago. I'm just gonna read the line because it's interesting. Confusing contradiction is unfolding in companies embracing generative AI tools. While workers are largely following mandates to embrace the technology, few are seeing it create real value. A recent report from the MIT Media Lab found that 95% of organizations see no measurable return on investment from these technologies, right? So like, the idea that you could use AI to just replace people, or that you could replace whole processes with AI just does not seem to be true right now. Now, at this point, anybody talking about AI would caveat that to say right now, because maybe we're approaching artificial generalized intelligence and someday we'll have like a superhuman god that's made out of computers for all of us to worship or whatever. I don't believe that. I'm not gonna make those caveats. It's not designed to do that. It's not going to do that, right? So I think while AI is extremely good at limited tasks, and I'm only talking about game development. If you look at fields like astronomy or cancer research, you can see like phenomenal uses of AI that are like pushing drug research. Like you're seeing AI like push the fields forward by like leaps and bounds in these very specific cases. But generalized AI, we don't see it doing that. Like AI that could replace a human doing a thing, we don't see AI doing that. We got to remind ourselves, and this is the point to say it, AI companies are not profitable, and they are not profitable at astounding rates of expense, right? Like tons and tons and tons of money is being dumped into this to try to make artificial generalized intelligence that has produced, at this point, nothing. So that's not great. And while there have been very specific productivity games from AI, we don't see generalized ones. So AI making your game for you seems far away. And recent AI developments have not shown improvement here, right? And so ChatGPT 5 was like a really disappointing thing for the industry because people expected it to be better and it wasn't. So while everything I said before is true, you are using AI right now, those uses are great, more of those uses are coming, and in specific cases, it's very good. Having AI do everything for you is probably not going to happen. But then there's a third thing that I think is the most important thing, which is that AI can't do game design for the reasons I said above. But I want to explain this because I want to explain what I mean by game design. I said AI can do all this, and it can, right? If like what you want is art for your game and sound for your game and code for your game and writing for your game, you can literally have AI do that for you today. But there is one thing that you cannot have AI do, and that is game design, which is the thing at the center of all of this, right? AI cannot actually make your game for you because AI cannot design games. Now, I'm a game designer, and you might be saying, that's convenient that the game designer's on stage and saying that AI can't do his job, but I'm going to prove it to you because the entire theory that we base game design on is essentially about this thing. This is MDA. This is a really good article if you're interested in game development. It is, I think, the most AI and many people in game development think is the most important aesthetic argument that's ever been made in games. If you come to my workshop tomorrow, this is what I'm gonna be talking about. But it's essentially about how interactivity creates art, right? And the idea that like just interacting, like just making decisions. If I take a game and I strip all the art and all the sound and all the narrative out of it, and I just give you the choices you have, the choices you have an aesthetic effect. The choices you have will make you feel something. The choices you have will make a story, right? That's how game designers make games. But that's complicated to think about in development. And the reason why is because AI, again, is good at making averages. It's good at copying and like replicating and summing things up. That's what it's really, really good at. But game design is not about finding the average. Game design is about inventing something new. Because what I'm trying to do is build an interaction that does something. And that means the interaction is going to be different. Like if an interaction has to make feelings, if I want to make an interaction that makes you care about one thing, I have to design that interaction for that thing. And interaction here, if you're not familiar with games, means the gameplay, right? So I hand you the controller and I tell you to do something with it. And the thing I tell you to do with that controller is gonna make you feel something. It's gonna make you feel angry. It's gonna make you feel comforted. It's gonna make you feel betrayed. It's gonna make you feel the story of Indiana Jones. It's gonna make you realize the plight of dolphins in the ocean, right? But the interaction has to do that. That means if I change it, and I don't want to worry about the plight of dolphins, but instead I want to worry about climate change, I need a whole different interaction, right? I have to rebuild the whole thing from scratch. And that's what game design is. It's like building those interactions from scratch. So we're not averaging anything, right? We're not actually trying to find a center of something. We're actually pushing at boundaries all the time to make new things. And so you could clone games, obviously. Like I could take a version of a game and just spit that out into the world. And certainly people think that's a good business model to work with, but the history of games tells us it's not. 6 years. And it was based on Overwatch. Right? Like cloning is not a formula for success in the games industry. It never has been. So unlike other art forms, and I think this is why game design is particular here, game design fundamentally questions core interfaces and structures every time you make them. Every game I've ever made in my entire life, and I've been doing this for 30 years about, right? Every game I've ever made starts with me questioning the foundations of the thing I made before. It starts with me re-examining the very basis by which the player comes to intersect me. The metaphor I gave is that like if you made movies the way you make games, you would remake a camera every time you made a movie. You would start by like taking the pieces of a camera and looking at it and figuring out how to build a camera that will make the movie you want to make. Right? That's how game development works. And that's like the center of games. Like the play is what you do. So if that's the center of it, how could artificial intelligence make that for you? What would that even mean? Right? If I told artificial intelligence to make a platformer, artificial intelligence could make a platformer, but I'm not making a platformer. Like my game is my vision for this thing. And AI can't know that. AI can't solve that for me. Like I have to build the camera because I need the camera I want. And the only way to get the camera I want is to think through how the camera has to work. There's never a point where AI makes sense in that process because AI is just going to pull it back to something that already existed, and I don't want that. So what that means is that, like if the key part of the design has to be thought up originally in the process, then you're doing the work anyway. And so you're making your game. I don't know if that makes people happy or sad. All right. So in short, AI today is not fundamentally built to be good at thinking for you or thinking of original ideas. AI is good at executing ideas that can be measured. It is good at executing ideas that can be modeled. It is good at looking at the world and pushing the world back to you based on your requests. But if you want to do original things, AI is just not great for that. And so AI can't help you. Now, I want to say that this means that AI is going to be a very big part of game development, right? Because it's speeding up a lot of these processes. No one, and I mean this as literally as I can, no one will program without AI after the next 5 years. That is just not going to exist. You will learn programming with AI. Every art tool you use, every sound tool you use will embed this into its process. But there will still be art and sound tools. There will still be programmers writing into IDEs. And there will certainly still be game designers developing games. So, technology will continue to create tools that ease workflow. That's specifically going to happen, like I said, in coding help, right? You're going to, if you have not already interacted with this, you're going to, and it's going to become better and better and better at it. And trust me, that's wonderful, because if you don't program, finding where you didn't write the stupid semicolon in the code is not a fun way to spend your life. I can't tell you how many students I see beating their heads into tables because they just forgot that something wasn't a public variable. That kind of stuff is going to go away, and that will be wonderful because coding will be more accessible to more people. It's certainly going to help with level design, right? If you just want to spit out a bunch of iterations of something, AI is great for that. So if you've built a system and you say, make me 100 levels of this, that will work. That's happening right now, by the way, right? I need 100 Candy Crush levels. That's how they get made. They don't get put in the game that way, but they generate them that way. QA help, it's awesome. AI is really good at just beating its head against walls for hours and hours and hours. And then art production tools, we don't even know what these are going to be yet, right? We're only beginning to see what we can do with AI and art, but that's going to get so sophisticated in the next 20 years in an awesome way. I imagine these futures where graphic designers say, give me a logo that kind of looks like this, and they get 400 logos from AI, and then they pick 3, and then they're more like this, and they pick 3, and then they're more like this, and they pick 3, and they're more like this, and then they pick 3, and then they stop using the AI and they design the logo. That's the AI future I see. That sounds great. And then producing is going to help a ton, and already is, right? Nobody writes meeting notes for teams anymore. They just have Zoom do it for them. And trust me, that's work that we don't want to do. But everyone should note that this is a concern, because a lot of the junior level positions that existed in the industry existed to do these things, because senior people got old and they were I'm not writing the notes for this meeting anymore. So we need to, as an industry, and I think as many industries, think about what we're going to do with junior positions when we don't have the need for these kinds of things. We still need new people to come into the industry. No one's blind to that. We just have to figure out what they're going to be doing when they start. But what it won't do is it won't create new game ideas. It won't code games from scratch to final. It won't replace true creative talent. And by the way, all of this was the caveat that these companies are spending a lot of money and burning a lot of trees, and they don't make money yet. And if you don't believe me, so railroads were created in the mid-19th century. And in the United States, they were extremely popular because we're a very large country, and getting things across the country was a big deal. And so when railroads came out, there were stories being told about what railroads could do, because railroads could move everything everywhere. And so a lot of money went into railroads. The top map you see is the number of railroads that existed in 1870. The bottom map you see is the number of railroads that existed 20 years later. Do you know what happened after that? The railroad industry imploded. Because it turns out that railroads don't do everything. It turns out that railroads are just really good at a specific thing, which is when you know A to B and you try to move things from A to B, it moves them faster and better than you can. But it certainly doesn't move everything everywhere. I mean, what technology would we think that we would build that would do everything for everyone? I don't know, that sounds like a bubble to me. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Gracias, Nick. Me gustó el concepto de del promedio de la inteligencia artificial mediocre, pero lo que hay detrás del concepto de inteligencia artificial mediocre es que la inteligencia humana es superior y que puede articularse con esa inteligencia artificial mediocre en tanto y en cuanto le pida cosas que le sirvan. Lo que no va a hacer es, lo que tú propones es que no va a ser creativa, que no va a generar algo revolucionario, que no va a surgir de ahí, sino que va a seguir surgiendo de lo humano. Esa es tu mirada.
Yes. Sí. Ese es mi punto.
Ok, ¿estamos de acuerdo? ¿Quieren polemizar? ¿Hay alguien que quiera hacer alguna pregunta? Aquí, al medio. Hay dos, tres.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Very specific question here. Do you think a person could be a game designer, like make the choices, handle things like the art, the sound, the levels, but not be a coder? Because I would love to be a game designer, but coding has been like one of the most difficult things that came across my way since I started this career. So just tell me, just give me hope.
Soy diseñador quien no programar.
In English.
Yeah, I'm a game designer who doesn't program. I mean, I program a little. I know how to program. I don't program because I'm not good at it. So it's not like worth my time. It's like much better for me to pay somebody to do it. You can do that. There are a lot of jobs that exist in the industry like that. Not many people learn how to code. You have to understand how code works if you want to work in the game industry, the digital game industry, because you will interface with code and you will write things into code. This is often called scripting. That's like the way it's referred to, where you change the data in code, and that means you have to be able to read code, but you don't program. Now, the promise of AI is that you will never have to program because the AI could just do it for you. But that's not where we're at right now. If there's anywhere, right, where programming, where AI might take over jobs in the world, it's programming. That's the one thing that you should keep an eye on, because if you can articulate your vision well enough in a prompt field that something could create code, that's essentially the same thing as a human coding, right? It's not very different. There are levels of technology where I think that's not going to be possible, but if you're just a game designer and you know what kind of game you want to make and you could articulate it to the level of detail that you would have to for a programmer to program it anyway, it's not unimaginable that AI could get to the point where it could do that. But you don't need to know that. Now, I would not, as someone who runs a digital game development program at a university, advise you to not learn code. Because I think learning code is valuable as a skill, and I think it trains you to work with other people. And so even if you don't want to program, it's probably worth it for you to beat your head against programming long enough that you could do it. And there's something very freeing about being able to make your own prototypes if you need to. But I stand here as like living testimony that you can work in games and not program for a living.
Bien, siguiente pregunta. Por allí también.
Okay. Hi. I had a question. Maybe do you look for inspiration or some sort of inspiration in other sorts of games, or do you look at other games for some ideas or things that could give you new material to use?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're an art form, right? We do what art forms do. You know, this old film thing, right? It's like, when you put two films together, it's like Westworld with still Alice in it or something, right? You've heard that kind of pitch thing. Like all arts do that. We do that too. I mean, like the game designing is about prototyping, And prototyping, what it means is make something fast and cheap to see if it works, right? Like that's like the core to our process. And a really good, fast, cheap way to see if something works is to find somebody who already made it and do their thing. Like that's a great way to figure out if something works. Like, hey, I think this is really good idea for like making a game about building a deck of cards. Oh, look, Balatro exists. Let me play Balatro, right? Now, if I make Balatro, then I'm cloning it. And there's an ethical question there about whether you want to do that or not. I find it unethical. Not everybody does. But it's also like Balatro exists. It's like, you're going to beat Balatro? That seems unlikely, right? So seeing that just gives you an inspiration, but the inspiration isn't simply like, oh, look, cool games exist. The inspiration is, look how this game does this interesting thing with a deck of cards. Look how this game does an interesting thing. So I'll just give you there's a hyper-specific example, right? Balatro is a game where you make poker hands, and then you get points based on multipliers and chips. A game by a game designer I worked with for a long time named Frank Lance called 7-Up is now available on Steam. And this is a game where you get a multiplier and points. This is clearly lifted from Balatro, right? Like it's 100% from Balatro. You do not play cards. That is not what the game is essentially about. The way the multipliers work is completely different. The way the points work is completely different. There's a narrative in it. There's no narrative in Balatro. It's a very different game. But it is obvious to anyone who makes games that they took that mechanic from Balatro. That's normal, right? There's nothing weird about that at all. Because games are a combination of mechanics. So like that's not cloning. Like Balatro doesn't do what 7-Up does. So like I can see a very different game there. Just like I can tell another Western story, and that's not ripping off the Western, right? Like the variations in the story are what matters. The variations in the mechanics are what matters. So the simple answer is, yeah, like we look at games all the time. We just play games constantly, and we play different games, and we play games that aren't just the games we like. We like fool around with interactivity all the time because what we're looking for are pieces of interactivity we can gel together. And as I mentioned in my talk, that's what game design is, right? Game design is like figuring out how a player plays. And how a player plays is made up of all these pieces of things a player does. And so I look to other games to show me things players can do. And why games are interesting to look at is because they often come up with new ones or combinations I've never seen before. And when I see those things, I have ideas of combinations that they've never seen before.
Bien, siguiente. ¿Dónde está el micrófono? Por allá atrás.
Hi, I just want to congratulate you about your speech. I never saw the IA on that way. I think what IA just, like nowadays, they sold you like IA is the new thing. They can help you to create new things and a new word, but it's actually not true. On your speech, it just clarifies that it's not original at all. So I have like a few questions on your speech. You mentioned the human intelligence is way better than anything. But on the games, you're saying like emotions is like kind of like the thing that is different on the human development. You know, like when someone develop a game, the emotions and the connections that are like on the games is the difference on the humans.
I want to modify that a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't think human intelligence is necessarily. Well, I mean, these terms are so fuzzy. I don't think that I am more intelligent than Claude on having the references to back up an argument about a piece of opera, right? Like, I don't think that's true. I don't think that I am better at finding anomalous light patterns in thousands of stars from a telescope than an astronomy AI is, right? Like, it's technology, it's better than I am. That's like me wanting to run faster than a train, right? Like, I'm like, technology will be better at specific things than I am. It's definitely going to be better than that. So like intelligence is sort of fuzzy. I think the reason why you're talking about the emotional stuff, I think, is because it gets to the heart of what I think this is. Arts are about taste, right? That's at the heart of what art is that it's made for humans, right? It's a human that thought of the idea because it's a human that thought that idea was important. It's a human that thought the relationship of these objects creates an aesthetic that's interesting to humans, and then humans consume that aesthetic and humans are pleased by it. It's all human subjectivity, all of it. Every single piece of it is human subjectivity, right? And a machine doesn't know that. It's not static. Like, it changes all the time. And it changes in subtle ways, and the ways it changes are not predictable. Netflix did this super interesting thing many years ago where they have a recommendation engine that comes from like how people like pick things, and they were trying to improve the recommendation engine, and they hired a bunch of developers to try to figure it out. And the interesting ramification of it is that there's a margin of error on the recommendation engine that cannot be replaced because people are crazy. Like, they're just not predictable. Like, people just have weird tastes, and like some 7% of what comes up in the feed is always just going to have to be weird because you don't know what people want, right? And because we know that's true, we just sort of recognize that, like, well, like if I'm talking about making art for humans, then I need humans in that process. It's not that art, like I said, art mutates. AI mutates. You can have AI generate random stuff. It's just it doesn't have a human sensibility about how it generates it, so it just generates whatever. Right? It is literally, if you've ever heard the metaphor, like the million monkeys typing to try to create Shakespeare, like that's what it is. That's literally what it is, right? And so like if you just pull like monkey 473,831's script out, right? Like that's not going to be good, right? It's going to be terrible, right? And what humans do though is when humans do this process, we bring taste into it, and we just like push ourselves towards that taste. And it's not that AI can't even do that to some extent. It's just not human, right? So it's not gonna do it the way we do it. And humans are humans. We live in human society. We consume human art. We have human brains that think like humans. We exist in culture as humans do, right? And then we through that process just sort of figure out like what these things are that humans want in ways that are original to humans. There are lots of kinds of games, I'm sure, that AI can make that would be fascinating for other AI. But that doesn't mean they're going to be good for humans, because it's the human interface that makes it work. And so that's why the example I give of like the graphic designer looking at logos and then picking the logos that are good, that's the relationship I see to AI. I used it as a fast metaphor, but it's the deepest metaphor I have. The AI can generate thousands of logos. The AI has no idea what humans in 2025 who shop for luxury goods are interested in. It can read it from what people did in the past, but it can't predict it into the future in a meaningful way because we have trouble predicting into the future in a meaningful way. But a human looking at it could get inspired. And a human looking at it could get a sense of like what this could do to other humans. And so that has to be present. And the art forms that I think push harder against that, the art forms that can't rely on the past the same way, which game design is one of them, are the arts that just AI has more trouble with because taste becomes so important in them.
Un fuerte aplauso para Nick. Gracias, Nick. Muchas gracias. Crack total.
Thank you.